So I'm Ruby Wong. I'm a junior at LMU. I'm a liberal studies major with a math concentration.
So hi, my name is Justine Swola. I am a junior biology major, women and gender studies minor. I'm originally from Maryland, and yeah.
My name's Katie. I'm a biochemistry major. I'm a junior, and I'm from the Seattle area.
My name is Edine Chen. I'm a junior women's studies major and art history minor.
So my definition of consent, I feel like it's very similar to the LMU Cares one, in the sense that I think it really needs to be clear, coherent, and ongoing.
My definition of consent would be that whoever is in a relationship, whatever actions they take together, they agree coherently and without any threat or manipulative actions behind.
You definitely have to say yes. You can't be like, sure, why not? And I think the ongoing part's important because sometimes you change your mind, you think you're going to feel comfortable and then it's complicated. And so you change your mind and you have to have that option.
So the definition for consent for me is something that is not obligated to an individual but is given to them by the person they are having interaction with. So I actually watched a video recently, and the man described consent as being in a four-way intersection. So if you're trying to cross the road, you need to get permission or consent from another individual before you can go. Because if not, then a collision happens. And that's kind of like people. People believe that consent is obligated to them, but it's more of a permission-based thing. You need to ask before you can receive.
I really like the idea of yes means yes. I think it puts way more control into the hands of both parties, because it means that instead of saying oh, I didn't hear a no, you have to actively say yes. And so that means that people are actively choosing to engage in sexual relations. And so that is very important, because you can't blame someone. People can hide behind the fact oh, I didn't hear a no, but they can't say, I heard a yes, but I kept going.
It kind of teaches people that you have to be really vocal and actively saying that you want to progress in your relationship or in whatever actions you take, because sometimes when you say no, it could be kind of confused with other responses.
When you're not clearly communicating, some people sometimes get confused. The person who's receiving the message is still at fault, but there is some miscommunication going on. So we really need to encourage people to understand that yes is the only correct answer, and it needs to be a yes, this is for sure.
So I honestly totally support the yes means yes movement. I believe that with the no means no, it's kind of like a gray area, because if a victim doesn't say no or they physically don't reject it, then the perpetrator believes that they can continue going on with this course of action. And I believe with the yes means yes, it's more of a definite yes, because they have to say an enthusiastic and excited yes. You know what I mean? Before and during sex. So I believe that yes means yes is more of permission-based thing, and it's more of a consent, and I feel like that's what we need when it comes to sexual assault, and with the given consent of the victim.
So in some of my women's studies classes, we have these discussions, and we are bringing up current topics that are really relevant to us.
For honors, I took an honors theology course, and it was theology of the body. And so our teacher on the first day, all these little freshmen were like, oh my God, this class is about the body, sex, oh my God. And she said, by the end of this class, I want you to be comfortable talking about it. And it did take a while for all of us to get to that place where we're comfortable. But I think it's such an important thing for people in general.
Coming into college, I was obviously just a biology major, but I had to take my first Intro to Gender Studies class for like a core last year for a sophomore year, and like the topics in women's studies is more of like, it's less of like science where it's just like formulas and math and like biology and chemistry, but it's more like real world situations and how like we as individuals need to work together to like make a change in the world. I feel like equality for all is needed in America, especially right now.
I think that LMU has done better than other institutions, but it can do a lot better. I know some survivors of sexual assault, and these instances occurred on campus, and fortunately these women were not given the resources that they need. I know one woman in particular is very open about talking about her assault because she wants to help other women who are in the same position, and I think that the LMU just really needs to step up when it comes to supporting survivors, because I know this young woman was re-victimized when she went into public safety, and they separated. She went in with her mother for support, and then she was separated from her and, interrogated by a male public safety officer, and that's not at all how you should treat survivors, and it's a really unfortunate incident, and she is incredibly strong, and I don't want what happened to her to happen to anyone else.
Someone that's not employed by the university should be working with these students so they don't feel an obligation to the university, but feel an obligation to the actual students and how to help them and how to move forward. And like things like the Clery Act are put into place for these victims. However, I feel like it's not being used. You're telling people to be careful when you're walking or don't wear short clothes. No, how about you tell people not to rape? Tell people not to sexually assault people. Like, don't victim blame before there's a victim kind of thing. And I feel like they kind of have to work on their wordings and emails when it comes to assaults and robberies. Like, don't blame people for living their lives. You should be more worried about those that are going to be perpetrators in the future.
I think the LMU Cares agenda, it has good intentions. I think it could reach to like a larger audience if it's even brought up as a like a course, something like where the content is discussed more, or students are educated more on consent and sexual assault.
I think it was kind of cool, like my freshman year, how they incorporated like alcohol education and sex education and that idea of consent, and how like they made it very clear that if you're drinking or if you're doing drugs, you cannot give consent. And so by playing the games and like reading the stories, it made it very relatable for people, for those people that are goal-oriented. It was like a great way.
I think that a lot of the RAs on campus are actually trained pretty well, because sometimes they're the first person that survivor will go to for what to do next, but they're not professionally trained, right? And so I think that LMU should continue to support their RAs because they do so much for this campus.
My freshman year, we did the LMU Cares program at the beginning of the year, and I think it was all required for all students. So I thought that was like a step to like progress.
I like the LMU Cares initiative, and I like the posters and the shirts, and I think it's good. Their bystander intervention, like by pushing that, I think they're doing a good thing, because I found myself in situations at a party or something where I will actually go to somebody I only barely know and say like, oh, how are you? How's your night? Like, do you want to keep talking to this guy, or do you want to go over here with me? And I don't know if I've personally like affected any outcomes or but I think that if we start trending in the direction of more intervention, like LMU encourages, that's a good thing. LMU also does a good job of providing a space for open discussion and dialogue about this issue, because I know that, before coming to LMU, it wasn't something I ever had the opportunity to talk about.
I guess don't be afraid to ask questions, especially if you know that the person you're speaking to is willing to listen and willing to talk through something with you. And if you're like ever confused or just not sure of where to go from someplace, like just reach out to people, I guess.
If I have to say one thing, it's not just LMU, it's across the board. Like, victims shouldn't be blamed. Like, it's no one asks to be raped, robbed, assaulted. Like, no one asks for that. So like, if that does happen to them, instead of blaming them, we should be helping them. We should be assisting them when it comes to like, I want to change jobs, like I want to change dorms. Like, we should be on it like that. There's no excuse at all. But that just for LMU, but like for all schools across the board and like everywhere, like schools, the military, like everywhere, because it's a big issue everywhere, to be honest.
We need to make people comfortable talking about sex and consent, because part of it, like, it's a taboo thing to talk about in society when it really shouldn't, because it's like a normal, natural thing for people.
It is an epidemic, and for 1 in 4 female victims to be affected, and 70% of them know they're perpetrators, like, I feel like that's a saying on its own. Like, we really have to move forward, because most women and men say like the rape wasn't even the worst part, it's the reporting and how it's treated. Like I said, the statistic was only 11% of sexual assault and rapes actually go reported. So that means 89% of men and women are not reporting this tragic thing that's happening to them because they feel like their voices won't be heard.
And I think that it's important to support communities who are open to talking about these subjects, and also just finding people who are also, social justice advocates and like willing to talk about what needs to be talked about.
And also for guys, we need to definitely point out that guys get sexually assaulted as well, because I think that's something that's lost in the back burner. And it's easier to victimize a woman because of people's societal standards of like what a woman is supposed to be. They're supposed to be demure, very dainty, and
It is important to discuss with just even friends or family members close to you, and start out kind of small, but soon enough, if you're really passionate about these issues, you would speak to like bigger groups and to like a more different audience.
And hopefully we can draw in other people who aren't maybe as comfortable talking about it, and give them an opportunity to listen and learn and contribute to the conversation.
And so I think being able to talk empowers people. And so like a lot of people who actually sexually assault others, it's about power for them. So maybe that might give them some empowerment. They might not see that as like a weapon anymore. They might have a deeper understanding of what they're doing. But it's really exciting to see how passionate people get about this issue, because it gives me hope that we can change LMU, we can change America in that sense, which I think will be really important these next 4 years.